I want you to imagine if there was a person in your life who always criticized you, someone who never really supported you. Every time you did something, it simply wasn't good enough. Whenever you look at yourself in the mirror, you're not pretty enough, you never earn enough money, you never do enough work. There's just simply no pleasing this human being. That's probably not someone that you would want to spend time with. That's not something that you would enjoy. But the thing about this is that we're not talking about another person in this video. We're talking about your own mind. We're talking about a part of yourself. And the tricky thing about this is that most people are so unaware of how much they actually criticize themselves, of how much they actually attack themselves. And this is a really counterintuitive and strange topic. Because the second you start to really notice this, that's when you start to wake up to the impacts that it's actually having on your daily life. The amount of suffering that you experience, your ability to take risks, your ability to grow as a human being, and far more. Now, our tendency to criticize ourselves is essentially an internalized version of the external criticisms that we've continuously heard from parents, religious leaders, culture, teachers, friends, peers, etc. The criticisms that you have of your own self that you are or aren't aware of are going to be directly connected to people like your parents, your grandparents, your friends in childhood, in high school, in college, religious leaders that you might listen to and look up to, people in positions of power and authority. And your mind comes to just internalize all of this and then use it against itself to avoid being rejected, in order to keep itself in line so that it doesn't look weird, so that it does all the norms, so that it fits in. And this ends up being a really traumatizing pattern, because you stifle your own development, you ruin your own authenticity, you start to drown out your own intuition, you stop listening to the things that are really in alignment with you, you stop listening to your body. Instead, an unconscious voice of criticism and dissatisfaction takes over. And the very, very strange thing about this is that we get used to it, to the point where we don't even know that life can be another way. Most people have internalized this inner critic so deeply that they just identify with it. They think that this critical part of my mind, this is just simply who I am, when it's actually not. And this critical aspect of our mind begins to develop around the ages of 3 to 6, and it repeats itself so much to the point where we just completely take it for granted. We don't think there can be another way to live life. We don't think our mind can be something else. And not only that, but the actual criticisms of our mind are stated in such a sort of absolutist way. It's not very open. It's not like this internal critic, it's not like it expresses an opinion or expresses how it's feeling about something. No, it makes a very absolute statement. You're not pretty enough. Your nose is too big. You have to get it redone. You're simply not good enough. You aren't worthy, etc. And even when it doesn't say these particular things, you might still have feelings of shame around certain needs. You might just have low self-esteem. You might feel incapable of taking a risk, approaching someone, doing something different. And if you are doing something different, it still might just attack you based off of that. It'll look for anything. And moments where maybe you're falling short of the standards that you set for yourself, oh boy, those are really good moments for that inner critic to just start to tear you to shreds. Right? What were you doing snacking so late yesterday, eating that junk food, skipping that day at the gym, not journaling, not reading that book, not whatever. This is an unconscious voice that sabotages you, sabotages your development, and is fundamentally impossible to please. There is no pleasing your own critical mind. It's just never good enough. And until you start to become aware of it, until you start to experience this part fully, to see it and to start to distance yourself from it rather than being identified with it, until you start to do that, it's going to play itself on a repeat, and you're going to just believe it, because we work as human beings in quite unconscious ways. We're very repetitive, mechanical. We live life on autopilot most of the time. And we just take life for granted. We think we know how things are. We think we know how they work, what they are, really. We think we know what we are, but we really don't. And this ability that our inner critic has to make things sound like the absolute truth plays into all of that. And that makes it especially hard to deal with. Because then even after you start doing this work, now your inner critic is going to start criticizing you because you criticize yourself. Here's another thing that it starts to use. So the major problem of really dealing with this inner critic is, number one, the fact that practically everyone doesn't even know that it exists, because our thoughts are just kind of happening in this autopilot-like fashion. It's just this stream of thought that we take for granted, we don't question, and we're identified with it. And anything that kind of arises in that space, we just kind of believe it, right? We just kind of keep going on with it instead of reflecting on what part of me is actually coming up with these kinds of thoughts. What is the actual purpose of this criticism? It's really to kind of keep you safe, to keep you in your sense of comfort, your little bubble of comfort. Don't take that risk, you can get rejected. It's to avoid shame, rejection, things like this. This inner critic is actually trying to keep you safe, but it's doing so in a way that actually sabotages you and fundamentally stifles your development, which is actually not keeping you safe. It's actually harming you, destroying your life, and actually causing a lot of suffering. So it's not so much about the particular words that the inner critic says. This is kind of a little bit of an advanced insight, but notice the energy behind the inner critic. Notice if it's tense, rigid, dominating, comes off as saying just a very absolute statement, right? You're just not pretty enough. This is just how it is. This is how life is. You're just not pretty enough. Your nose is too big. You will never make enough money. You're too stupid. You don't work hard enough. You need to push yourself more. You need to work more, right? Even when we set a goal and we accomplish it, funny enough, right when we're about to accomplish it, it just kind of gets pushed back a little bit. There's always something new to chase after. We set the goal, but then the goalpost, it keeps the finish line, it keeps moving just 10 meters forward, 10 meters forward, 10 meters forward. It doesn't stop. You have to recognize that there is no pleasing this part of you. That you're in a cycle of just like listening to it and being trapped, running around in circles, feeling ashamed, having low self-esteem in certain areas of your life. And if you deny that this is happening, well, then you're falling into that that major problem that I was talking about of just not even being aware that this is actually occurring in your mind. This isn't something that like just affects one person but not another person. This is a feature of the human mind, and people can have this to varying degrees. Some people have extremely strong inner critics. Some people have weaker ones. Right? Like personally, when I first started reading, I would read around 2 books a week. And if I fell short of that goal, I would start to feel unworthy. I'd start to feel like I had lower self-esteem. I would think I'm lazy. Things like this, they would just start popping up in my mind. And I was doing a lot of meditation at the time and doing a lot of writing and like parts work and all this kind of psychotherapeutic stuff. So I was able to start dealing with this stuff to see what's really going on inside of my mind so that these self-shaming narratives just kind of begin to decrease and decrease and decrease. And then in the place of that, instead of just self-shaming, I could have genuine and healthy self-dialogue that helps me to achieve my goal. Here's maybe why I didn't achieve the goal that I wanted, or maybe this goal doesn't fit me. So I could still have that high standard, but now I could do so with more flexibility, with more room for error, and with just no shaming. And that liberated me from a lot of suffering. Suffering that I was inflicting upon myself unconsciously without even really digging into like, why am I actually doing this? I'm doing this, right? That's a really interesting thing to recognize about shadow work, is that you're doing it, right? Like, it's like you're pinching yourself and you're not recognizing that you're pinching yourself, and you keep denying that you're pinching yourself. So these critical perspectives will essentially prevail for as long as we do not separate from these internal judgments, for as long as we don't become aware of them and start to see this as like a sub-personality that we have. We have to recognize that we aren't this critical voice. We're just kind of awareness, watching. And as we begin to shine awareness on this part, we can begin to experience it more fully. We can actually begin to integrate it into our sense of identity, into our sense of who we are in the world. And from that place of awareness and experiencing it directly, not avoiding it, but experiencing it directly, we can begin to let go. And that's when the magic happens. That's when you have a choice to break free from the pattern that you're in. That's when you actually have a say in what you're doing. It's a bitter pill to swallow to realize that you're acting unconsciously in a cyclical, mechanical, robotic, autopilot-like fashion. And until you become aware, experience it, and then let go, you don't have a choice, right? You're very limited for what you can even do in your life, because you're just deciding to stay stuck in all this old conditioning that's designed to just keep your little inner child safe so that you don't have to experience things like rejection, disapproval, being invalidated, the shame of being criticized by others. So instead, you just do it all to yourself to avoid all of that. Make sure you never fall into those traps ever again. But of course, that's a lot of suffering. That's far more suffering than just opening yourself up to life and really listening to yourself, regardless of whether it's approved of or rejected, etc. So this inner critic isn't something that's ever going to be pleased. It's not going to go away until you actually learn how to integrate it, until you actually give it its own voice, until you start to become aware of it, until you start to separate your sense of self from it. You start to gain some distance from it, so that it's not just controlling you. You're not identified with it. It's not just so dominant. And you have to learn how to actually question the statements, these absolute statements that it creates. I just need to work harder. I just need to be more pretty. I just need to get my nose done because it's so big. Until you're able to actually start to see what it's doing in real time, you can expect it to just remain on its current course, wreaking havoc upon your own psyche. And this is a form of self-abuse. You have one part of you just attacking the rest of you. You're really just abusing yourself. There's parts of you that are in conflict with other parts, and it's up to you as the leader of your own self and your own inner world to harmonize them so that you're not destroying yourself unconsciously and then being in denial that any of this is even occurring. So that's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. I'm doing one-to-one coaching. Link is in the pinned comment. See you later.